This module is on providing instructional feedback to teachers. This is one of the most important tasks that you will do as a supervisor. This is the one-on-one direct assistance. This information is related to the text by Michael DePaula, which is also a great resource. So when we look at instructional leadership, these are some of the things that are operating. We've talked about supervision. You also have to give some time to professional development. There's also the evaluation component, but all three of these are working together to create instructional improvement. So when you look at being an instructional leader, you have to know what quality instruction is. You need to come up with your recommendations to encourage it when you don't see it, and you need to have conditions for this continuous professional learning for your teachers. So some of the key things in instructional leadership: you want to define your goals. You want to have a plan to monitor the feedback for teaching and learning. You want to think about your professional development program. These are going to influence your circle with leadership, what you're moving forward with the academic pieces, and student achievement. So you want to keep a climate to prioritize what it is that you want to accomplish with your instructional leadership. You want to have this clear system of teaching and what you want from your teachers for objectives, and then you want to have high expectations for both teacher and student performance. When you think about the impact, there is some research that's listed here talking about the effect size and also supporting and evaluating teachers through regular classroom visits by providing both the formative and summative feedback. There is research based on the impact that the leader has on the teacher. The teacher is the number one factor in improving student achievement, and then the principal is number two based on the research. So as you think about this activity and this information, think about your principal or supervisor and how they've helped you to grow, and then think about maybe when it was not as successful and what some of the differences are. You certainly want to be that type of leader that really is looking out for the one-on-one professional growth of your teachers or coaches if you're in athletic supervision. As you think about that and your teacher feedback, this Frayer model is helpful. Think about your definition. What are the characteristics that you want to see? What are the examples? And then what would be non-examples as you try to clarify for your staff, either coaching or teaching, what it is that you want to see on a regular basis. Then we have the classroom performance model. In the school context, these things are taking place. And then you have this influencing with teacher and learning the teacher to the student, the methods and the pedagogy that they use, the classroom community, and then you have your student outcomes, which is by student learning, and then also teacher performance. So then when we look at the classroom performance and various models and systems, we've looked at quantitative and qualitative feedback, which is based on the data that you collect related to instruction and student performance. So you want to think about what it is that will take place in terms of the effective feedback, and then think about the adult learners, since these are teachers receiving the feedback, and these are some things to keep in mind. Classroom teachers want the feedback. They want to know what it is that they need to do to improve their instruction, and then what exactly that would look like. Think about the barriers that prevent teachers from receiving the feedback and try to make that a priority so that you can be continuously improving the instruction. Things that may not work or impede that are high-stakes evaluations. Sometimes the evaluation instrument is not as helpful. Observations that don't provide the specific feedback. And for data, this one, certainly if principals are too busy to complete them, or if it does not focus on the learning. So these are definitely ingredients that you want to think about to try to avoid some of those obstacles as you're planning for quality feedback and supervision. When you're looking at your evidence, we've had some practice with collecting evidence. So you want to think about the observable evidence, be objective. Some of you may have had comments on your papers if you're not as objective, free of value judgment, and you want to avoid ambiguity. When you get into the evaluative component, you are drawing a conclusion, and certainly there is a subjectivity. And of course, when you're observing and then evaluating, you're making inferences based on the observational data that you collect. For a formative assessment, you want to remember that timely feedback is important, both to inform the teacher and the observer, because that collects information and can share ways to grow and improve the instruction. And it should be in a timely manner, just as you would want to see with students from the teacher for something like a formative assessment or homework assignment. In this next activity, it would be to your advantage to take time to view the video clip here and think about how this connects to observation of classroom instruction. It should be a formative process. The principal and the supervisor want to come together to look at coaching, reflection, investigating, and studying a problem for the greater impact of classroom instruction. You want to formulate the context for which that takes place. You want a non-threatening atmosphere. You want to look at the classroom data, and I've tried to encourage you with your papers and your feedback to provide the objective data. You want to be professional in tone, both in a face-to-face meeting and in your writing. And you want to work together to enhance the learning process. And when you're providing feedback, it is giving the information to the teacher on how they are doing as they're trying to reach their goal. It is not advice, it is feedback, and it should be constructive in nature. I would say that this is one dispute here, that it may be evaluative, because if you are the supervisor and you have an evaluative role, then you are encouraging them to do that in order to improve their evaluation. It should be not judgmental, because you want to back it up with data, and it should be about quality instruction. The feedback should be tangible and transparent. You should include data that is accessible and easy for the person receiving it to understand. You want to think about it being actionable. In other words, what you're asking to be improved upon is something that is clear and concise and understood by the teacher in order to give them action steps to make that change. And of course, you want your teachers to accept the feedback, and that comes from developing a strong rapport with your faculty. You want it specific and personalized, and this idea of timeliness, that if you wait too long, it loses its impact. When you give your feedback, you want to use the observable evidence that you collected. You want to reinforce that from what you know as effective practices. You want to talk about the impact of the teacher's behavior on the students, because it is about their learning. And then you want to, in terms of one-on-one direct assistance, provide information for the teacher for their area of need or focus. When you're required to use the data by your teachers, using the data, you have evidence-based models, and then you have a higher recurrence of success. We've talked about the graphing and the information, which is another way that you can use to reinforce what it is that the teacher is getting as you provide the feedback. You want to have an establishment for ongoing, where there are lots of opportunities to receive the feedback, and you want to be consistent. And this is both within your day-to-day contact and feedback, but also within the leadership team. You want to have consistency in the feedback that is given. make sure that the teachers are clear about the goals and how this will help them for the students, and the need for them to understand what the intended learning outcome is. There are many graphic organizers, and some are posted on Canvas. This is another one. In terms of your post-conference planning, you look at the data that you came up with and collected. What's your area of growth? Look at the outcomes for the conference, which helps you plan what it is that you want to accomplish, what are things that need to be considered, and then questions that you may want to pose or suggestions you want to make. And this is especially helpful as you're early in your career of conferencing with a coach or a teacher, because it does give you kind of a blueprint or an overall action plan to have ready when you work with the teacher or coach. And I think this is helpful for formative assessment. As you're reflecting, you collect and analyze your data and then make your reflection. You have your professional goals and the professional plan. That is when you're planning for what you want to have happen. Your professional growth, collecting and implementing, is the teaching piece, and then assessing that growth is the reflection piece. And I appreciate your time for this module.